There's something decadent about the sound of gold coins as they shift and roll away from me as I stretch upon my bed. And their beauty is beyond compare. Or, at least, the ones nearby me here, reflecting the deep, perfect crimson of my scales. I still find it unconscionable that a disgusting, paltry race of, well, I can barely even bring myself to call them dragons. Why should they be allowed to array themselves in this noble color? In all honesty, they don't look golden. They're washed out and pale, almost as bad as the so-called silver dragons. Those snot-nosed pieces of trash have to ask for help from humans, to have any chance of defeating a red dragon such as myself. I'd die of shame if I even thought of asking a human for help. And, speaking of, where are my sheep? I've just decided I'm hungry, and Talon, where is that worthless?
I'm here, my lord.
Where are the sheep the villagers owe me?
Well, they aren't due until arrive till tomorrow, so I suppose...
What? Do you dare suggest that I made a mistake?
Oh, no,
Come closer. How does my breath smell? Now, I think it's time I teach those idiotic peasants a lesson. When I say I want sheep on a particular day, I want it a day earlier.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teachers in the Dungeon. I'm a well-cooked Tom Gross.
That's the kids' lingo.
Yes, well, when you hang around them.
I am Dan Ream, and we're sweltering in the dungeon today, so it's almost like there's a fire-breathing dragon or something nearby.
You chose red dragons for July for a reason, and it's your fault.
Yes.
We have been sweltering in feels like temperatures of well over 100 for about the last 5 days.
I think they just put those on the news to give Midwesterners some street cred here.
Yeah, that's right.
It really is as bad as the South, but
whew, man, it's been toasty. But reading about red dragons sure didn't help.
No.
Their hate is about as hateful as 100-degree humid day. You just don't feel good about that.
They might be even a little deadlier, but not much.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. While I was preparing for this and reading about red dragons, I thought this is going to be our quickest dragon show of ever, because I can wrap up red dragons in 3 words: hate, fire, and destruction. I'm done. The show's over.
I did find, and when we get to the notable name dragons, we might skim, because there's really not much. I couldn't find much to distinguish one from the other.
They all have the same story.
Yeah.
Well, I chose one that has a little bit different story, but I chose him for a different reason. But I was like, oh, this isn't. He has an interesting story, but
yes.
We'll get to that a little bit later.
So that might be one of the things we kind of circle back to is what do we think of this? Is this a? I mean, they're iconic. The Red Dragon is
100%.
The dragon of Dungeons and Dragons. But is it a good thing that in some ways they're so recognizable that there's very little deviation?
Right. I mean, I even think about one of the most famous dragons of fantasy lore and literature, and he fits the bill.
Smaug.
Smaug,
yes. Well, yes. And I think that is, as everyone knows, the original D&D did draw heavily from the lore of Lord of the Rings. And I think this is one area where they've never deviated. Mm-hmm. The more I looked at this, and as I was writing I had to be careful, because every time I started writing toward what a red dragon is, I was Like, no, this is what Smaug did this.
Yeah, right.
He did this very thing. And even anybody who's super familiar with The Hobbit will know, stretched out on the bed of gold and just luxuriating in it. Yep, that is...
Yeah, and knew every coin in his collection.
Yes.
That is what's so phenomenal about the writing of J.R.R. Tolkien, is his descriptions are so well done that to portray it, like, that's why the Lord of the Rings films are so good, is because it's it is a great story, but the shows and the movie become so well done because they've got the blueprint to a T. And so, sticking to the Red Dragon model, why not? You've got the perfect Red Dragon to work from.
Yes, he did create an iconic character that's very... I mean, Smaug is the perfect villain because I shouldn't say perfect. There's all kinds of different types, but personality-wise, he's very magnetic. And in the books particularly, you're terrified for Bilbo, but you also are really intrigued in the wordplay that goes on between the two of them and that sort of thing. So, yes. So we're going to jump in and use our usual template. So we will look at, we will start with, what are we going to start with? We usually start with a quote. I left half my notes over on the other desk. So,
I could tell you were shuffling papers over there. I'm like, he's definitely looking for something specific.
So we'll start with our lore and description and move on behavior. So the best quote I found within the published materials is, "Rapacious, cunning, and destructive, red dragons are Tiamat's favored children, embodying the worst that dragonkind has to offer."
Rapacious.
Yes.
That's a vocabulary word. I need to look that one up, but I got a pretty good idea based on how it sounds.
Yes.
That it's not good.
Yes. And I even found that scholars and mages in the D&D world have given a scientific name to the red dragons. It's Drago conflagratio horribilis.
That is... Okay, I mean, that is cool.
Sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
It does, yes. Something you would cast to destroy things, for sure.
So, yes, they are chaotic evil. They're the epitome of chaotic evil. Yeah. They are covetous, self-interested, vain, greedy, cruel, resentful, and they nurture grudges forever. And not only that, but all of those traits they see as virtues.
Yes.
They are proud of things that should make them ashamed. They have a very fragile pride, and it is very important to maintain dominance over other dragons.
That's it. I can't. I don't have anything to add to that because you just described everything that I wrote down. They just are. They're awful, awful creatures. But I think probably the most important thing you mentioned there is that they don't see themselves necessarily that way. Or they do, but it's a matter of pride and not awfulness for the sake of being awful. It's almost the worse they can be, the better the red dragon they are.
Yes.
In their own minds.
Yes. It is the normal scheme of things just completely flipped on its head. Right.
And because of all that, they believe that they are the greatest of not only all dragons, because, I mean, you had mentioned that. I mean, that was part of your story is, that they are superior to all others, but they are therefore they're the greatest of all creatures as well. So they place dragons above everybody else, but then they place themselves above all dragons.
Yes.
Because that's...
Yes.
And if you were perceived to be the favorite child of Tiamat, then why wouldn't you feel that way?
And we might get into this a bit more later. The one chink in that armor of self-congratulatory attitude is they sort of know deep in their hearts that gold dragons are better. And so they work extra hard to pull them down if they can.
Yeah. There's a great picture there's a new, I wish I could remember the name of it now. There's a new book out. It's an anthology of adventures of dragons. And the art that's in it, I think largely is art from a vast amount of Dungeons and Dragons lore over the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great picture of a red dragon and a gold dragon in battle. They're in the air. And the gold dragon has wrapped its body around the neck of this red dragon. And it is just in consternation and anger and spitfire hate the red dragon is, because it's in this precarious situation. The gold dragon's face is so like just zen. It doesn't seem constrained. It doesn't seem like it's putting much effort into it, but the red dragon is furious. So I appreciate you saying that, because I would not have remembered or thought that deep down they know they're not the greatest.
There's a tiny little grain of insecurity that probably just fuels their rage all the much more.
I mean,
like a tiny bit of uranium making an entire nuclear plant go.
Right. Yes. Exactly. I mean, if you don't have that, what do you have to be angry at? Or what do you have to fear?
Mm-hmm.
And so that puts that little bit in there.
So some other things, just to kind of a little bit more of lore and description. They're warm to the touch. The air around them sometimes shimmers with heat. They smell like smoke and sulfur. They hate getting wet.
Yes.
And this is a little bit of a segue into behavior, so I'll say this, and if there's any other description that you want to throw out. They like to spend their spare time dreaming up new tactics and strategies and plots to get even more power and more stuff. So if
That's not too far from me.
If I did this, then they'll do that, and then I can pounce, and they'll never see it coming. So
the only thing that I have to add to that is, and it's just building on what you said about getting wet, is that there's some place in the sources that I was looking at that said they don't really drink water because their scales and their skin retain it, so they don't really need to drink water. I'm trying to remember what it was that said that they drank. It was something that would instill heat. And
I read somewhere that they love to drink alcohol, but they will never ever get drunk.
That was it. In fact, that's where I found that they don't drink water very much because it's already in them, and plus they have that
and plus all the blood they consume.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's all in that.
All right, so moving on to behavior. This is something I had not found in our other research, so I guess I just missed it. But where I found it said, like all chromatics, reds cycle between activity and hibernation.
Oh.
And they said, not as much as the greens. And I thought, well, we did the green dragon, and I don't remember.
I don't remember that either.
So they say they can hibernate up to 10 years at a time in some instances.
Thank goodness.
So I thought that's an interesting thing to bring in, to sort of retain a little bit of balance in the D&D world. These creatures are so awful and so destructive that you need to power them down every once in a while to keep them from
that crossed my
out.
mind, is that they are so hateful, and they will just consume a city or a civilization just for the sake of doing it and then taking their gold. That how could anything possibly survive? And you look at the images that they've created of these ancient dragons that are just, I mean, they're on Tarrasque level size, at least they seemingly. And you're just like, how could anything in the area of where one of those lives survive unless it's in complete servitude to the red dragon?
Well, I did read that they are intelligent, and they understand that if you clear cut everything around your own house, that's not good. So they do tend to reserve most of their destructiveness for further afield.
Okay.
But
that makes
so
sense.
You're either enslaved to them or you're burnt to a crisp.
Kind of reminds me, I'll bring this up when we talk about how to use them in an adventure, because the hibernation gave me an idea.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So they do, as we've already mentioned, and as you would expect, they are all about gaining the hoard and building the hoard. And it is entirely based on monetary value. That is the only measure. And this is one of the interesting things, too, that I saw, that they can look at an object and know its value down to the last copper piece. So they are experts at knowing the value, evaluating things of gold and gems and that sort of thing. So they're not as interested in art and music. There's a couple exceptions to that, but for the most part, they want gold and they want red, orange, and yellow gems because those are fiery.
I'm glad you said orange and yellow because when it said that it likes the fiery colors of, all I could think was red. Okay, orange and yellow. Duh.
Well, the book said fire opal, but I was thinking, no, there are topazes. They're not called orange rubies, but it's essentially there's a gemstone that exists in our world that is the same. It's the same chemical composition as rubies and sapphires. It just is orange instead of blue or red. So I could see that being something that they would be interested in as well. Yes, they know every piece in the loot in their hoard, as you already mentioned, and if one gold piece goes missing, they will fly into a rage.
Yep.
Like Smaug, again.
Yeah. Yes, and you gave me another potential, I don't know if it's an adventure idea or if it's a lore piece that you could put in there, so I'll save that also. But where it builds from is, how could they, because of the size of a dragon of this magnitude, how in the world could it possibly keep track of all of that? It's got to be a magical thing that it knows. And
the mention of the few dragons, once again, borrowing from Tolkien, diamonds and gold will kind of stick to their bellies.
Oh, right.
And so you'd think,
that's right.
if you went flying off, surely a couple of those would pop off in flight. And would that also make you mad, or would you just consider that as collateral loss and leave it at that?
I'm going to bet not.
So one other thing about their hoard is, even though they're highly intelligent and should know better, they can't help themselves and they have to brag about their hoard far and wide.
Yes. And
of course, that's going to lead to more adventurers attempting to get it, take it, steal from it.
Right. Yes, they love to tell the tale, and that's what gives them that joy. And I'm sure every tale has something to do with absolute annihilation.
Yes.
I'm guessing. This came from this, and this came from that. And you had already said this, but the only other note I had on their treasure, besides other things you've said, is, anything that's papery, wooden, scrolls, potions, that kind of stuff, they discard.
Yes.
Discard, burn, destroy. Yeah, they have no interest in that. It doesn't make nice little jingly noises.
No.
They love that sound.
It's not shiny and...
Yeah, they love that sound. And you put that in your story, too. The decadent sound of gold coins. There is something to that. When you get a fistful of quarters and you just kind of roll them around in your fingers, there's a nice sound to that.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine gold would sound even better.
Well, not quite as good as a handful of dice, though.
That is true. Except my favorite dice, the dragon would destroy, because there's a wooden set of dice for it. And I wish I could remember the name of the game, but they have such perfect wooden dice that when you shake them in your hand, it just makes the greatest clicking sound of like light wood. The dragon would just burn that up.
Yeah.
He wants the metal dice.
It's not valuable.
Alrighty.
So, also behavior. Another major thing to talk about is how they interact with other dragons. Again, we've kind of mentioned that already. So there's a dragon they hate more than the golds. That actually is silver.
Yes.
They absolutely loathe silver dragons.
Snot-nosed dragons.
Because of them being... It's a PG show, so there were some other things I was going to have him say, because a red dragon would definitely swear.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So we had to edit down to after-school special. But they do tend to clash with silvers over territory. So that, I think, is one of the main reasons why they fight. And even though red dragons are more powerful, they usually lose against a silver because a silver will work with other silver dragons, or, again, as I kind of mentioned in the story, they'll get human help as well and coordinate a takedown of a red dragon. So not only are they muscling in on Red's territory, but they're behaving in a way that the Reds find utterly contemptible.
Right.
So they just want to eradicate them as much as they can.
Did you come across anything about, do red dragons counsel at all? I didn't come across anything either on like them as parents.
Oh, I did.
Did you? Okay,
yes.
Good. Okay.
So they will very, very rarely work with other reds, but for the most part, they're extremely solitary. Okay. Another red is as big a threat as a silver or a gold to a red dragon.
Okay.
So there's a couple things they'll do. So when they see a foe, even though they're intelligent, they're impulsive. So they'll make a snap decision whether to attack or not. And if they attack, they won't fight to the death, but it's very difficult to overcome their pride and retreat if they need to.
Okay.
So death will often result. When they see another red dragon, what they're usually thinking is sizing it up. And if it's less powerful, they'll attack it. If it's more powerful, they'll try to ambush it.
Oh, okay.
Younger versus older, older versus younger. And as far as family life, the female initiates the courtship to mate and produce eggs. As soon as that's done, the male gets out of town, often because he might be seen as prey as well. When the wormlings hatch, they might cooperate, but they're just as likely to fight to the death so that only one remains. The mother will keep the wormling around until it grows big enough to be potential competition, at which point she will drive it off.
Okay.
So once again, there's no maternal love, there's no tight family.
I thought you were going to say that the female then, when the male's job is done, she kills it and eats it. Isn't there a spider that does that or something?
Almost all spiders do that, yes. They do seem to model it after that. They also say that, and this is interesting because this appears weirdly enough in How to Train Your Dragon, in that red dragons behave a lot like cats.
Oh.
They hate water. They enjoy playing with their food. They're pretty exclusively carnivorous. They especially like young, attractive humans, and a couple of the sources do note rather wryly, but they just taste better. The tropes are all of the stereotypes and tropes get piled into the red dragon. The fair maiden that needs to be rescued from the evil dragon.
Right.
The villagers having to yearly give up a tribute of young people to be consumed if they want to preserve the rest of the village. So all of that is embedded in the lore. They said that one other thing that's interesting about combat, and this is where my teacher self comes in, and I actually wrote, like high schoolers, female red dragon fights are far more vicious than male red dragon fights.
Okay.
That when female red dragons fight, it is as dirty and unending a grudge as you can imagine. So the only other thing that I found is that their dung has the ingredients of black powder so that it can be explosive. I mean, give explosive diarrhea a whole new...
Right. And I saw that as well, and I thought it was interesting that they will sometimes take their like waste heaps and use them as traps.
Yes.
And like lead other dragons to those areas and then just ignite it.
So that's pretty much behavior. I don't know if there's anything else that you...
I didn't have anything else. Nope, you covered it. That was... Yeah, well done. probably the one piece there that you gave me that made me kind of like a red dragon is that you can compare him to a cat.
Yes. Yes.
And it's interesting you say that, because one of the abilities, one of the special, like, legendary actions of a dragon, or red dragon, is pounce, which I thought was an interesting choice of words for something like a red, because I always see pounce as being a little bit more playful, and red dragon I don't picture as being playful, but now that you've described some of those things, it makes sense.
Yes, in a sadistic sort of way. I did find a couple other things. When they feel old age approach, most Reds will launch a suicide mission against an old enemy so they can go out in a blaze of glory.
Really?
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, and I did find a little bit more lore on their interactions with other dragons. The other reason they hate the Silvers is the one thing Reds are vulnerable to: cold damage.
Oh.
And Silvers have a cold breath.
Yeah.
So it's the one thing that makes red dragons look weak in combat. So they really don't like that. They come into into conflict with amethyst dragons, because reds will dig very, very deep for their burrows and end up in the Underdark, and
that's where the amethysts.
Yeah, and that's not good for them. Copper dragons. Now, copper dragons aren't really a threat, but they like to live in the same areas. And I did find this kind of intriguing. Copper dragons love to irritate and embarrass red dragons. So I think that's a dangerous game.
Yeah, boy.
But they will, if they can get away with it, they will mock and belittle them, and then probably run and hide as much as they can.
Like bullying the bully.
Yes, yes. And one last thing I did find in one source is that a few red dragons serve as mounts and companions to Githyanki. Githyanki.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. I don't know. When I say it makes sense is in that new compendium of dragon adventures, Githyanki are in the Red Dragon Adventure.
Okay. Yes.
So that makes sense then.
Yeah. Tiamat set up a treaty with the goddess of the Githyanki, I guess.
Okay.
So it doesn't, like, a dragon doesn't spend his whole life doing that. It's just when they're young, and then they get sick of it and they leave.
Right. And I believe, I'm trying to remember the name of the dragon, the main villain in Dragonlance, I believe. Not Lord Toth, but anyway, I believe she is a red dragon as well. Hell-bent on destruction and rulership over lots of areas.
Yeah.
Something else you said reminded me of something else. It's escaped me. So maybe it'll come back to me. Okay. What's next?
So habitat,
yes.
lair. So they say they can be anywhere, but prefer heat, high elevation. That obviously means a volcano if they can get one. That would be their preferred location.
Yeah.
But really any place within a large cavern system if possible.
Did you look at the model lair that's in Fizzbands?
I saw it real briefly. I didn't.
So it was just kind of cool. So the entrance to the dragon's lair in the model that's in Fizzbands' Book of Dragons?
Treasury
of Dragons. The entrance is right, so it's in a volcano. The red dragon would fly into the mouth of the volcano, and the entrance is right above the pool of lava. I can't remember. There's a name for that called
Caldera.
And so it flies into the side, and the caverns were not built by, or even naturally created. They weren't built by the red dragon or naturally created. Azur had built this cavern and created a huge pillared area, and then it didn't go into specifics. It just said the Azur are no longer there. So it's hard to tell whether the red dragon took care of that or if they just abandoned for one reason or another. Probably, because that is one of the pieces of lore I've got here, is they prefer to steal a place from other creatures or force other creatures to build an underground safe vault. Okay. So I just thought that was really kind of a cool image, that the mouth of its lair is right above the caldera.
Definitely.
Which I can't imagine, other than being in it, I can't imagine a hotter place on Earth than that. And so that was pretty cool. And there was a lot of natural cavern that was connected by the Azor built these large pillared rooms that I can only picture a dragon hoard, just piles and piles of gold that must be layered in there.
Yes. Another callback to Tolkien with Smaug claiming the dwarven chambers as his,
of Lonely Mountain. Also kind of symbolic of the red dragon being isolated loner of a creature living in a mountain called Lonely Mountain.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess the question is, do you like sulfur or do you like smoke? Which is your preference today? I'll put on sulfur today and see how that is, because a lair of a dragon will reek of those two things.
Yes. Yep, that's what I got. Some of the lair actions and features: small earthquakes, noxious gases, magma geysers. Water sources within a mile will be hot and also tainted. So got to bring your own water if you're going after them.
Yeah, right.
And one thing I thought was interesting is that powerful red dragons are able to cause portals to the plane of fire to open up here and there within their vicinity. Cool. So they can cause droughts and desertification up to 5 miles away. And this last one I thought would be cool to be a cool thing just visually for a game. A dragon can cause all flames within a mile of its lair to turn dark red and hiss and crackle constantly. But then that is not just flavor, because those flames also allow the dragon to scry, basically.
Right. I mean, the description I saw was any open flame. So even a candle, they could listen through. But I think about, just carrying a torch in the realm of red dragon, would be extremely dangerous.
Yes.
Because it knows everything. It's kind of like carrying your cell phone.
Yeah.
Let's ponder that for a moment.
Dragon GPS.
Yeah, I really thought that was a cool piece of the regional effects, is that scrying through a flame. And the hissing and crackling, and it just that ominous flames, I think, is what the regional lair action is, or lair effect is called. But what it made me think of was the symbolic nature of that lair effect, because the crackling, and it spits showers of sparks and embers pop out, and it makes me think about that could destroy in the area, because it's arid in the lair, in the region of a dragon. And so the behavior of the fire is symbolic of a red dragon, in that it's always trying to ignite something else by crackling and hissing and spitting showers of sparks and embers out of the fire into this arid area. Just, there's a lot of it. There's a lot going on there.
Well, their stats and abilities, they are obviously hyper powerful. We don't have to go through all the numbers, but their armor class ranges from 18 through 22, as they are 17 to 22 as you go from Wormling up. Ancient Dragon is going to have over 500 hit points just out of the gate. Challenge rating of 24, which is not quite God tier, but it's definitely the same as like Devil Lords and Demon Lords.
Right.
Things of that nature.
Interesting you say that. I've come across this word numerous times in researching the other dragons, but it was heavily used in descriptions of red dragons, and that is the term Great Worm. I always just assumed that meant, just a very powerful dragon.
Ancient dragon.
It means slightly more than just ancient dragon.
Okay.
And it goes to the level of what you're just talking about. A great worm reaches that level when it has near godlike abilities.
Okay.
That's the definition of a great worm. And so I discovered that while I was researching the named dragons, or the notable dragons, and many of them were, made the point to say achieved the level of great worm at this juncture or whatever. And so it's prompted me to look it up. And man, when you look at the stats of an ancient dragon, that great worm is very descriptive of that.
Yes.
Because there wasn't a saving throw that I saw. Like, I was looking at the breath weapon. The saving throw to take half damage of a 24d6, I think is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
At least I was looking at the 24 monster manual, by the way. The CR, the con save on that was 24. And I couldn't find anything that was much less than a 20 on a saving throw for dragon effects.
Yes.
Man. I don't know. I've never played a 20th level character before, but a 24 just seems extremely high.
Yeah. I noticed those too, definitely. So they are tactical geniuses. So this falls into what I normally have trouble with is, you create a super smart monster, then you've got to be super smart to play it. So I think, well, I don't know that I would know how to make that work. But anyway, that is one of the skills. And as I mentioned, they are vulnerable to cold, but their fire breath can go anywhere from 30 all the way to 90 feet, depending on the age of the dragon. Mm-hmm. So a dragon essentially could have 2 or 3 blasts at you before you could even get within melee.
Yeah.
But of course, if you're going after that kind of a dragon, you probably have spells and steeds and things that can move much, much more quickly.
Yeah. Going into melee with a red dragon just doesn't seem wise.
No.
Looking at I look at the art, and I'm just there. There's this picture in, I think it's the full page art of the 24 monster manual, and it's a face. You're looking right into the face of a red dragon stepping through the destruction of a town. And in the what's the part of the picture where it's closest to you, the foreground. Is a soldier with a sword and a shield. And I'm like, dude, you better turn it around. Because I'm just you would be stabbing the toenail of an ancient dragon as a human.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I mean, I know when you get into those levels where you would be fighting an ancient dragon, you're a paladin. Yeah, you can go into melee with a red dragon because you've got massive armor, you've got massive shields, you've got magic behind you, certainly. And so it's a little bit different kind of a story. But, man, some of those images that they show of these dragons going against humans, it's who would do this? And you think about the battle on... all I've got is 10 towns, and that's Icewind Dale. What's the town outside of the Lonely Mountain that he comes? Dale, yes. And it took a crack shot.
With a giant black arrow.
Yeah, to bring Smaug down.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's things like that. It's legendary. It has to be a legendary move, which I don't think, does a 20th level character have legendary moves like a creature does?
I don't know that I've ever looked at
I'll have to look at that because, we will have 20th level characters at our summer camp.
That is going to be chaotic.
That is going to be so Dan Crawford, our friend over at Cabbages and Kings, is running a game at our summer camp, and the kids, he has the same kids this year basically that he did last year, and they wanted to do higher level characters.
Yes.
I think their thought was 9th, 10th level, and he dropped make 20th level characters. I was I can't wait to see what happens there. So we'll see. We'll see what we'll see what that looks like.
I thought, how cool that they get to do something that virtually no other D&D player gets to do, because nobody ever makes it to level 20.
Right.
So now, granted, obviously they're kind of backdooring their way in, but it'll be fun for them to experience. I think
that will be cool. We have to get some comments for the show.
Yes.
From that table.
Yes, definitely. So the only other things, obviously, if we said fire breath already, they do have spells, as all dragons or most dragons do, affect normal fires, heat metal, pyrotechnics, but then also suggestion, hypnotism, locate object, discern location. So a very clear theme.
Mm-hmm.
It's greedy, loves hoards, loves treasure, spells to help him get more.
Yep.
Obviously fire related, and then all dragons obviously have that sort of mess with your mind type of thing.
Right. Like the spells really wrap themselves around the idea that they're going to command and take over the minds of people around them to either destroy them, or maybe, like you said, they like to play with their food. Maybe watch, command them. I know command doesn't allow you to do this, but they're dragons, so, command the food to fight each other or something crazy like that, weird. The two attacks that I put down were just, I love the language of it. Rend and pounce, we already talked about.
Yes.
I thought those were well used words for the red dragon.
Yes. So I found at least 19 named red dragons.
Mm-hmm. The longest of any dragon that we've come across.
Yes. And probably not surprising that that's the case. And most of you guys probably picked up on this way quicker than I did, but the reason for this, they're almost all in either video games or in novels that are set within the D&D world.
Yes.
And so red dragons clearly are a favorite of creators as well. They're a very good foil for the heroes, I suppose.
Yeah.
So this is where I would say, honestly, at first blush, this appears to be a weakness in the design of the monster. I looked through these. I went through descriptions of everyone I could find, and they all kind of run together. Mm-hmm. The behavior falls almost completely in line with what we've already described.
Yeah.
So there is one line in the lore that says very, very occasionally a young red dragon may become disgusted with the wanton destruction of his kind and will turn away from it. And if they do that, they become sort of a hermit. They'll go and live even more remote and just get on with life without being around anybody else. But for the most part, they stay evil. So I'll throw it to you first, because you had mentioned that you had found some stuff.
Well, before I did any research on notable red dragons, I already knew who I wanted to do, because it's the most notable dragon that I'm aware of because of a game. So there you go.
Okay.
This is not a video game. This is a board game. And it is one of those, I don't know how else to describe them. They are the tile-based D&D game where you start, your characters start on a tile, and then you explore, and as you explore, you add tiles and you build the dungeon or the terrain that you are searching. And so the game is called The Wrath of Ashardalon.
That's where I heard that name. I looked at that and I thought, I know I've seen this, but I can't remember where.
Yeah, and so Ashardalon is in this game, and it's cool because you get to do different adventures within the game, all of them building up to, if you follow the progression of the adventures from the beginning to the end, it's kind of like those games that are, I forget, they're called Legends or something like that, where each time you play, your characters get better.
Oh, yeah.
And so you build up to facing Ashardalon. But anyway, Ashardalon was around before the game. He is known for lots of things, but probably the most known for just the terrible rampages that he would go on. Kind of sounds like all the other red dragons we've been talking about. But he's known for taking lush landscapes and absolutely decimating them to ashen plains. So he has kind of a temper. Mentioned in songs across the multiverse, and because of that, he's noted all the way down to small little bards singing in the Yawning Portal, or maybe Troll Skull Manor. You know, everybody knows of Ashardalon. He's legendary. So what makes him different from a lot of other red dragons is that he, at one point, became mortally wounded. And so he had also, because of his self-interest and his self-love, he did not want to die. And so he linked himself, I'm using the wrong word, there's a better word than linked, I need to find I went off script here when I was talking about him.
I've got the same story written down here, but I didn't even try to come up with cool words.
Yeah. So he suffered that mortal wound, and he attempted to extend his life by binding. That's the word I was looking for. Binding himself to a Balor named Amet. And the point was so he takes Amet and he creates this like tattoo of him on his chest, so that visually makes him different. And when he does that, when our Shadowlan does that, he also gains some demonic physical traits, like his eyes and his horns change to look more demonic. So he binds himself to this Balor as a second heart to try to revive his body and overcome the mortal wounds. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so he banishes himself to the astral plane because of the timeless nature of the astral plane. He can't die there. And so that is where he lives now, is in the astral plane, but his disciples on the material plane continue to do his work and his followings and whatnot. And so our Shardalon is legendary, but is unique in that he chose to bind himself to a demon to attempt to save himself, which gives him a different kind of look. So that's our Shardalon.
Another veneer of evil on top of everything else.
Right, exactly.
So I'll just mention one. I'll say as sort of prelude, though, occasionally I could find a couple of red dragons who weren't as bad as others. They were maybe a little less destructive, a little more reasonable, but none of them were good or even neutral, really. So we have to, I can't do a red dragon show without Thumbershoad.
Yes.
So everybody knows him, so I don't need to say much, but it was interesting that, his general story is that he was sort of trapped and controlled by a group of Durgar and used to power their forges. And this appears to be something they had done generationally, that they would take a young dragon and do this. When he grew or she grew to be a threat, they'd kill it, and then by that point have another egg that was ready to hatch. And so Thumbershoad is a bit different because he is very self-indulgent and eats himself into morbid obesity, so much so that he realizes, he figures out what's happening and hates it, but he basically says, even if I killed these Durgar, then what? I still can't get out of here. I can't, we're too far underground and I'm too big. I can't dig my way out. So it's a little bit of pathos there, I guess. He can't fly. The description I read said he can hop around like a chicken and flutter.
Right.
And that's about it.
I picture him also as like inchworming.
Yes.
Himself, like
Yes. And so the use in the D&D movie, Honor Among Thieves, I thought was brilliant.
Yes.
Because he was scary and just hysterical at the same time. I remember laughing so hard.
Yeah.
The first time I saw him losing control and rolling.
Yes, when he barrel rolls.
And I think, and maybe I just invented this, but I feel like the designers, there's panic in his eye when that happens. Like, oh no.
Yes. Yeah, he has a sad story.
Yeah.
But I didn't know him before the D&D movie. I thought it was incredible. After doing this research, I was like, that was incredible use of a really sad kind of story dragon to give him some life and levity.
Yes.
The way they used him. And I don't know, my claustrophobia really kicked in when it talked about that he realized, like when he realizes he's created a prison for himself.
Yeah.
And he will never see the sky. He never has seen or never will see the sky above.
Yeah.
And I just, oh my gosh. I was like, get me out of here. And just, wow, what a tragic kind of story that is. And man, those Duergar, opportunistic and smart. I mean, I hate to say I take pity on something that's so evil, but they really took advantage
Yes.
and found a way to, what's the word? I'm always at a loss of words.
Exploit.
They exploit the desires of a red dragon.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, he's a cool dragon.
Yeah. Just misunderstood. I could change him.
Yeah, we could fix it. I mean, if Zank couldn't do it, I don't think anybody could do it. But I loved how they did. So I don't know where you read about him. I read about him in the wiki.
Yeah.
And how the person who authored the story of Thembershard just talked about those characters just like they were characters of any, like they didn't try to highlight the movie as something special or unique.
Yes.
It was just part of his story.
Canon. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just cool. Whoever wrote that, thank you for doing that and not making it kind of
in the movie.
Yeah, right.
All right, so final thing. This is 2 topics, but we always mash them together. How to use in a campaign and how to role play.
Yeah.
And you said you'd had a couple ideas.
Yeah.
So I'll go first
ahead.
just because I don't have anything creative. And I'm guessing that you do. So obviously they're the BBEG. They can easily commit all sorts of horrific crimes against the innocent with such relish that any player should salivate at the opportunity for vengeance. Very easy to make a bad guy that they hate. Mm-hmm. Because it does say, the lore all says they're so casual about murder that they have no problem just breathing and killing somebody if they feel like it, if they're bored.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that would make them really, really, really fun to kill at the end.
Yeah.
Because they got it coming.
Right. You know, when we talk about role-playing, it's the same conversation that we have with every dragon.
Yeah.
It's so intimidating to try to play something like this. Like you had said, you know, they're tactical geniuses. So what DM, I mean, not me.
Yeah.
I am no tactical genius. So I would almost, okay, so here's a DMing question for you. If the dragon is a tactical genius, and you as the DM are not, is it unethical in your game to cheat and hear the players talking about their strategy and counter based on what you know of their strategy?
I would say yes. Probably would be cheating. Mm-hmm. But I could see where it would be done. I thought you were going to say, go to ChatGPT and say, I need a tactical plan for...
Yeah.
And that might be the way to go.
Yeah, that is true. Which, by the way, I've never done that. But what I have done on a DM side, this is kind of an aside to our conversation on the Red Dragon, is that I have listened to what they've talked about and thought, ooh, that's a cool idea. And so I build it into the adventure, as a side.
That's a meme that characters say, oh, I bet that this character is really this person and this is the plot. And the DM is frantically writing it.
But yeah, I've never done I just listen to them put their strategy together. My strategy sucks. And so I'm going to change it based on what they do. So I always try to, I let the opening rounds of the battle.
Sure.
And then I know what's going on. And I think, the dragon or whatever this is that I'm playing is smart enough that they would see what they're doing and then try to counter it. But usually it's too late by then. But so I almost feel like in my adventures personally, the red dragon becomes the threat. He becomes the Darth Vader of the story.
Yeah.
To where we're really not going to see the red dragon. We're going to see the red dragon, the effects of the red dragon. And maybe at the very end, but I just don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
The other thing I thought that could maybe add a little bit of interest or intrigue is, what if a red dragon seeks out the party to deal with an even worse threat?
Oh, okay.
And so you could really twist the screws on your party and make them choose the lesser of two evils.
Got it.
Or maybe you find a way, how much can you look away from what this ally of convenience is doing because that what's coming is way worse. That could be if you've got a group that likes wrestling with the moral questions.
Right.
I think that could be really good. And to shift a little, we can shift back obviously, but to shift into the role play, you could have that red dragon be just awful, to just hate the fact that he has to ask for help and just bitter about it the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So on the adventure side of things, when we were talking earlier about hibernation, I thought, what if the adventuring party is in a village that has clearly been traumatized by a red dragon? They have lore, their bards and their tavern conversations of story are about the destruction of a generation of the town or something. There's all of this, but then it's like, where is the red dragon now?
Yeah.
Because we are aware that they will hibernate, but it's been 2 generations. So did something happen to the red dragon? Did something blah, blah, blah? And so they're trying to figure out, should we go see if we can find the hoard of the dragon? And maybe that dragon has carried off heirlooms. Of course, there'd be golden heirlooms or gemstone heirlooms, but people of the village want their stuff back.
Yeah.
And because its story, its history, and its value. And so they send the adventuring party off to find the hoard of the dragon. And then it's kind of a Bilbo situation where, it's still there, and it's sleeping, and there's the hoard, and this is the stuff that the town wants. Now what do you do?
Yeah.
And so you've got a hibernating dragon. How do you deal with that? So I thought that sounds kind of cool. And it's the fact that the dragon's going to be very close to waking up. It's because it's been well over the 10 years or so that it normally. And so it's not in its deep sleep. And so then the party has to decide, do we thieve? Do we try to assassinate it? Do we, there's all sorts of things that they could do there. So the other thing that came to mind is we were talking about, how does the dragon know every bit of its treasure? Well, maybe it has some followers that are the accountants of the dragon. But the accountants don't live with the dragon. They live in the village. I don't know where to go from there. But they are known to be, consorts of the dragon. Everyone in town knows that these 2 or 3 people work with the dragon to keep track of the hoard.
So they're untouchable because the dragon will...
Yeah, so you can't mess with them. But I think there's something that goes around that. There's a story there that the people know that these people will go to the dragon hoard. So there's a trade. There's maybe something happens to one of the accountants.
Yeah.
They die in a terrible accident. Just a complete terrible accident. But everyone's like, the dragon's going to kill us all because this accountant. So what do you do with that? So
that'd be cool.
That was another kind of fun one that I was thinking of when we were talking.
Yeah. So maybe the goal of adventure is to fool the dragon.
Yeah.
And not actually rescue the people, or if you're a low level character, maybe that's what you start your adventure, you're level 1, level 2, and you have to try to find a way.
Yeah.
To fool the dragon, and maybe you eventually circle back when they're stronger. Okay, now it's time to deal with him.
Right.
That could be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So as far as role playing, and this is, I feel a little more comfortable with this than the tactical part, but just how you would play it. If you're going to play to type, prideful, peevish, quick to take offense at everything, that could be fun.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Right.
That
every little thing.
We know a few people that we could model that off of, I think. Just a couple, not too many.
It's just a few.
And I just kind of made a note that it would probably be a good idea to have plenty of NPCs available for a red dragon to kill in fits of anger or even boredom.
True.
Just to make it clear. As they said in Galaxy Quest, I'm the character that gets killed just to prove how serious the situation is.
Yep.
So, and the only thing I thought is you could play against type, make the dragon ashamed of its fellow reds. And I thought, or you could go quirky, maybe give the red dragon a quirk, maybe thinks all redheads are spirit dragons or something like that. Enjoys stacking the coins of his hoard as high as possible, but flies into a murderous rage when they fall over.
Okay, that's fun.
So I could
That's
see
fun.
that being like maybe when you enter the horde, that's what you see is these impossibly high, carefully
Yes.
balanced stacks of
Stacks of
coins
coins.
that you have to try to get around.
Oh my gosh. That's great. I love that. I thought about also, playing on, I like, this is kind of goes with, your idea of going off what you would expect of the Red Dragon is, really creating a story around one where, maybe this Red Dragon is someplace you would completely not expect it to be, like in a cold environment. And you discover that, I don't know, it was one of those younglings or wormlings that was disgusted by the behavior of others, of just destruction and everything. And so it's isolated itself in a cold environment because that other red dragons would not encounter it and want to destroy it. And so then you have to learn, like, what's the motivations of this dragon. And I mean, who's to say there couldn't be a lawful good, or something that's not chaotic evil. And so this dragon is a little surprising, but then you always are on edge because it's like when you tame a black panther. You see these people who have a black panther living in their house, or a bobcat or something, but you never know when that thing's going to go primal. And so they got this red dragon. Or what if you come across an ancient red dragon, again, could be in a non-traditional location, but it's upon its death's door. And unlike our Ashardalon, it is accepting its death, but maybe it has one last wish, and you are the one that happened upon it. And here's this extremely dangerous ancient dragon, but it knows its days are numbered, but it wants you to do something. Maybe it's one of those crazy things where this chaotic, evil red dragon upon its death's door wants to atone for something and wants you to go do this for it. Or I don't know, something just off kilter to kind of surprise the party, that makes it challenging wherever they go when they say, well, we're here on behalf of, and then everyone wants to kill them.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how to navigate that.
That'd be cool. That would be cool.
So,
yeah.
All
Lots
right.
to go on. There is actually, to tie into that a little bit, one of the named dragons, I think, was in a novel of some sort, but a powerful mage cast a spell on it that, for a duration, changed its alignment.
Oh.
And then flipped it back. So maybe you could play on that and say the spell is old and it's unraveling. So the dragon essentially has multiple personalities or whatever, and you never know which one you're going to get.
Okay.
On any
That's
given
cool.
day.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, definitely some magical things you could do with a red dragon that would set up something, some kind of adventure. Well, I have to say, it's warm in the dungeon, but here in just a few minutes, I'm going to have to step out. Because, it's always nicer underground than it is.
That's true.
So, but anyway, that is our conversation about the red dragon. We got a lot more out of that than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Because they seem to have that stereotypical type, and to get away from that, is a bit of a challenge. But I think we came up with some good ideas of how you could do that.
That's just this is going to go much longer and I don't want it to, but as a DM, I think that something that sort of I struggle with is, all right, yeah, let's make the quirky, red dragon, but not bad. That becomes such an easy thing to do that
Right.
I kind of like your idea better of, no, it's still evil, but maybe it's got this one sin on its conscience that it wants to get rid of.
Right.
That could be kind of cool.
Right. And imagine if it had something to do with a gold dragon.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, we'd love to hear what your ideas are regarding red dragons. Have you played a red dragon before? Are you much smarter than me and was able to tactically outwit your players with your red dragon? Or are you in the same boat as we are, or as I am, and just intimidated by playing a red dragon because they would be a lot smarter than I would be at the table. Nonetheless, fun conversation. We'd love to hear your feedback on it and your thoughts about Red Dragons. You can send those messages to us through Gmail. That would be teachersinthedungeon@gmail.com. But you can always hop on to social media, Facebook and Instagram, Teachers in the Dungeon. Twitter is @Dungeon Teachers, and then we're on YouTube as well. Be sure to check those out, and let us know what your thoughts are about Red Dragons or any of the dragons we've talked about this year. We can't wait in the future shows to talk about our summer camp and how things go with that. We've got our largest summer camp numbers rolling in around 37 campers this year, which is an increase of about 8 from last year. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole two more parties, two more adventures. So we'll be talking about those, and we have Gen Con on our mind coming up here in a month or so, a little bit more than a month away. So, alrighty. Well, thank you for joining us here in the dungeon today, and until next week, keep rolling those 20s.